Hello, friends. We are here with the lovely Andrea today with Infinite Possibilities. I'm going to have Darcy read her bio before we get started. Darcy?
Hello, all. I am so thrilled to be in this conversation and find out about what Andrea is going to share. Andrea Arlotti is pioneering the interconnectedness of quantum neuroscience, conscious intelligence, and spirituality, alchemizing pain into purpose through integrated wisdom, the sacred union of science and soul. Her proprietary methodologies align the brain, body, and soul while empowering you with awareness to create new neural pathways that align, release, integrate, and embody your soul's divine, authentic blueprint. Her empower, integrate, and embody approach serves leaders, entrepreneurs, top tier professionals, elite athletes, healers, and professionals seeking transformative results for themselves and the communities they serve. Her mission, Andrea's passion and mission, is guiding clients' natural neurobiology back into balance. She understands firsthand how trauma, C-PTSD, autoimmune challenges, GI issues, chronic stress, infertility, and difficult life transitions create unexplained illnesses that can be healed with the right support and tools to guide your intelligent body and mind. Andrea truly believes we are all meant to thrive and live a beautiful life. You are not meant to walk this journey alone. We are stronger together. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Darcy. I am so excited today, Andrea. I had the opportunity to meet you at a somatic healing conference, and you were the last workshop of the day. And I remember reading your bio going into the workshop, going, this is going to be so fantastic. And what I loved is that you read the room in such a way, energetically, that you ended up providing us a sound bath at the end of the workshop. And it was phenomenal. Like we were all like our nervous system, we had received so much information that day to like have another, hour being hit. You were able to kind of summarize the work that you did, and you're like, you know what I'm going to do today is support everybody right now with this healing sound. And I was so grateful.
Thank you. Well, I feel like all that information coming in, we do need to embody it and regulate, and that is where the sound healing is so powerful, integrating that vibration and frequency. So, thank you. It was such an honor to meet you there.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I know everyone really appreciated that modality in that moment. And so yeah. And you and I shared some history in California.
Hmm.
Do you want to share with everybody what you were doing back there in California and where you are now?
Well, I grew up in Irvine, so yeah, and then went to University of Arizona for undergraduate work in speech pathology, and then came to Kansas at KU to get my master's in speech pathology. And my passion was always the brain, and looking at traumatic brain injury, and so it's really come full circle as I started to walk my own journey of healing and seeing how our nervous system, our vagus nerve, is really affecting so many things in our lives and in our bodies. And so that has taken me on the trajectory of trying to look for other modalities. And so bringing all those modalities together that I feel really helps with healing. And that's what's brought me to where I am today.
Mm, I love it. I love it. And I feel like the nervous system is something that people are just beginning to kind of pay attention to. There's a lot more
Yeah.
education and information that's getting disseminated to us as clinicians and to the world in different capacities. I would love for you to share a little bit about the work that you do. I had the gift of you offered me a session with you, so I can definitely speak to that as you begin to articulate yourself, because I know a lot of our audience likes to know, like, well, what to expect
Mhm.
going into a
Yeah.
session with you.
Yeah,
Um,
and that was where I'm excited because we never really processed that. And then you went on your beautiful pilgrimage journey. So I would love, to hear also
yeah,
before I start, like what was your experience and what you felt and noticed? Because it's very much out of the box. And I see a lot of people who are kind of at the place that they've tried everything and it's really hard for them to trust that anything is going to work for them, especially if we're looking at complex trauma or medical trauma, things like that. And so um, I think there's always a little apprehension of what's going on in a session. So I would love for you to share before I share what your experience was in receiving the work.
sure. I think that for me, um, I think the nervous system, I mean, I think there's going to be work for the rest of my life because I'm constant, like, as soon as I feel grounded, I'm an empath by nature. So I'll get hit with like a ripple from the world
For
of
sure. Yeah.
empathy. So it's like, there's always this like layer that will need to be taken care of and supported. I think just more supported, and then just exercises that can be useful for me over time so that I protect myself a little bit better so I don't feel like I'm getting hit as much. But what I could say is that it was a gentle, I think, well, first of all, anybody going to see you that has a little bit more of a hyper nervous system, there needs to be this like safety,
Safe
and
container.
security
Yeah.
and a container. And you definitely, because you were still a stranger to me
Mhm.
going in, into this environment. So, what I could share to the audience is that whether you're doing it virtual or in her office, there's just this really safe space that's really calming and grounding to just your nervous system alone, given that this is a new person that you're allowing to enter your space. And she has this very extensive questionnaire, because she really wants to understand what's going on and what works, what doesn't work, to what you to to at least where you're at. So and she gets into the work in lots of different layers. I kind of did a shorter version just because of the nature of my life, and I was literally leaving to go to the Camino de Santiago very shortly after. But within what I could say is that I was in a calmer place in general, but I still was in this kind because I was organizing myself to leave the country for a period of 10 days. Um, the way I came in and the way I left was different. And I would say, it felt like acupuncture times three, like where it was, um, and the ripple lasted a little bit longer than an acupuncture session for myself would have lasted, um, which I was like super appreciative. So it wasn't just like, okay, I feel good for an hour and then that's
Mhm.
it. Like a massage sometimes you're like,
Exactly.
okay, now
Yeah.
what? But there was like a little bit of a delay too. Like there was some like calmness, and then like the next day I felt it still. I felt your energy, which was really interesting. Like I felt like I carried you with
Oh,
the
I love
next
that.
day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I felt like you were in my pocket, like in a good feeling, like,
We'll
oh,
always say, I feel you on my shoulder and you say little things.
yeah, it was really interesting. It wasn't creepy. It was like this really kind of nice, like, I don't know, she's here with me to support me or something. Um,
Well, and I think when we think about that co-regulation and creating that safe container is so important. And like you said, we did a shorter version and typically in session, even if people are coming in for just physical issues, I take time to establish rapport and create safety. And so I'm really looking at the body and the mind. We kind of focused more on the body for you so you could feel the work. And that after effects that you're feeling, if we think of how we are so quantumly entangled with one another, and especially more of us of those that are more empathic, we were connected at that point energetically, and I am always like thinking about my clients afterwards and sending them good energy and all of the things. So even though they leave my office, I knew you were on the Camino and was sending you so much good energy for your travels and safety and all of that. And Yeah, so typically with the nervous system after the work too, depending on how much trauma or how long we've been holding these patterns in the body does want to slip back and go back to what it's used to. When I work with teens or younger individuals, younger adults, they tend to move and shift and create those neural pathways quicker, just because of the nature of they haven't grooved them into their brain for such a long period of time. So someone that has, had the typical pattern or activated response, et cetera, then it's going to take them longer to prune that out. So I always say, like, we shift the body and then it goes back a little bit, and then you come back in and we shift it again and it stays longer. And so usually people report a couple days after the first one, depending on your nervous system. And then, it just keeps going longer and longer until you find that anchored nervous system. We shift the belief systems. And so we do a lot of processing in that, looking at internal family systems, attachment. And then we really try to anchor both of those in together. So the belief systems and the body are really anchoring into the vagus nerve, into the nervous system. And then that's where we create changes. And then we have those tools around us, and we learn our co-regulators, and I actually have a self-paced nervous system quantum reset program where you take 22 days and it's really embedding all the pillars that I've created so that you can do that on your own, and you're doing something every day to pour into you to really create that anchoring in of that new frequency that we're trying to shift and change.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to kind of talk about my session with someone at the behavioral health group that we went to on Friday. They asked me, they're like, "Oh, what is it like to have a session with her?" And
Oh, wonderful.
I wanted to give her a sense. And so it is a combination. The beautiful, you use some of your sound modality, which is really calming to the nervous system. So that was like a piece that I think it's kind of nice if somebody takes to sound baths, that they actually get a taste of that in your
Yeah, and it's really the beautiful thing is, when we look at binaural beats or frequencies and even listening to those tones, I always recommend, listening to those when you sleep or when you're trying to calm down. And those binaural beats, what they're doing is they're shifting our brainwave states. And so the alchemy crystal bowls that I use in session and then in my sound baths are helping the brain to find that comfortable place, especially when I'm new, until your body can learn that I am a safe person, and that co-regulation. Because sometimes I'm seeing people with complex, very serious trauma. And so to feel safe and have someone, coming into their space with that gentle touch. And it doesn't have to be that way. I've had clients that I'm modeling what to do on their own body. So that's always an option. Or if it's a distance session. But the beautiful thing about the sound is it starts to calm the brain. It starts to calm the body just on its own without having to do anything. It's sending those frequencies. It's going into spaces where there's protection or contraction, and then helping to dissipate that so that there is more healing. And then a lot of times people fall asleep on my table, which I always say is the biggest compliment, because if their nervous system can feel safe enough to settle and fall asleep, then that tells me, and then we're able to go deeper into the body, go deeper into any patterns that the body's holding. So,
yes, I think the
powerful.
hybrid of touching, not touching, the co-regulation. Can you speak a little bit more to the co-regulation piece?
Absolutely. So our nervous systems are always scanning whoever we're around, scanning for safety. There's also something called neuroception, so I'll touch on that after. But co-regulation, so if my nervous system is feeling very activated or unsafe, depending on how your nervous system is feeling, I may co-regulate with you. If you're in a grounded, safe state, then that's going to help me to ground. And so the people that we're around really do affect our nervous system. So I work with, teens and adults and men and women, but I always say with the women that I work with, being the center of the home, especially if you're a mother, if we're working on her nervous system, she is a co-regulator for everyone around her. So when mom shifts or someone in the family shifts, everyone else starts to shift around them. So I say, if you want, like usually people will come in, they'll be like, I want you to see my son, I want you to see my husband, I want you to see my daughter, which we do. I do a lot of family integration, but just that person shifting their own nervous system shifts everyone around them. And so we are co-regulators for one another, for better or worse. So if we're around someone who's very highly activated, very anxious, we're also going to feel that, and that can actually dysregulate our nervous system. Neuroception is something that is beyond that awareness. Co-regulation, usually, depending on how much dissociation is in the body, we can monitor that, feel that, notice that, and that's something else I work with clients is We bring in more interoception. A lot of my clients are very dissociated from their body, especially if there's a medical trauma, they've had a lot of pain. So we're slowly titrating that in at their comfort level, but neuroception is below that in the brain. And so that can be things even like smells, sounds, or things that just your body is telling you. When we say we feel that gut feeling, that's more of that neuroception. Well, that person seems like they're safe around me, but my body's telling me something different. And that's not always the case. Hyperactive amygdala may scan and see things that are unsafe because it reminds them of something in the past, but it's not necessarily what's happening now. And that's where that complex PTSD comes in and can be difficult to tell, is this person safe or not safe? And so people really, can go back into their shell and try to isolate because nothing's feeling safe. And so it's all really about, in the parts of self work that I do, is also looking at those younger parts and parts of you that maybe are frozen or protecting or have been exiled, and how do we speak to those parts and reparent them to help them find safety, that us in our higher self will protect them, will you speak our truth, will stand up for them. And that's that part of that whole process. So in session we're co-regulating, you're finding safety and healing with another person. We're looking at patterns within the current situation, family of origin, really looking at the root of where these patterns were created. And then we're bringing that all up to the surface, creating new belief systems, and then receiving on the table to integrate that into the body. So there's a lot of layers and different pieces that all really blend and weave together in the way that I create my quantum neural integration sessions.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there's another team member of yours that focuses on the family piece. Is that what you
Yeah, so I actually have two team members. One, Lori, works with me, and so she is a social worker. Also, my background is reflex integration, and so not only through bioenergetic healing, I'm a yoga practitioner, trauma certified yoga practitioner, speech pathologist. But the reflex integration is looking at unintegrated primary or primitive reflexes of the body and how we reintegrate those through movements. And so I'm trained in that. And when I met her a couple of years ago, she was telling me she was trained in that too. And so we always dreamed about working together. So she is focusing with birth through teens or young adults and working with them, and also working with parents and the school systems to help with anxiety, depression, eating disorders, those populations that are really struggling, and then working on that reflex integration, also working with parents in more of a coaching way to help them, and then also working with the schools. So there's this really integrated approach. And so we're really looking at all ages. And then my other practitioner, she was actually a client of mine and walked with her son through his eating disorder, and I supported her through that. And so she went back to school, and so she'll be supporting parents of those who are struggling with an individual with an eating disorder. So we're really trying to look at coming around the whole family. And then I work with families, more younger adults, so parents, and looking at how can we restructure the whole home environment to create safety for everyone. And I really feel like in the programs that I've wrote, so the 22-day program is self-paced, but I also have something called the Spiral program, which is a curriculum for young adults and schools, churches, other type situations where everyone is receiving the same information about the nervous system. Because if we start realizing that we're all co-regulators, we can use the same information. When we feel triggered, we know how to insert our tools or take a break, then the whole family unit can really shift. And, we're all doing the best we can with what we were brought into this world with and what has happened along the way. And so it's really just empowering ourselves to see where we are, to honor that, and then how can we create shifts and honor everyone around us and where they are.
I love what you're doing. It's awesome.
Thank you. It's so, I feel so passionate about what I do just because of my own walk with myself and my children. And so I come by this work really honestly, and it is just, I know it is my passion and my purpose, and because I can see the changes in people and I can see the healing. And so and it doesn't take a long time. It depends on everyone and where they're wanting to go. People that are writing books, or I love working, like you said, with healers, and I love working with everyone, but I love working with the people that are also working with others, because there's so much secondary trauma, as you know, and most of us that are in that space, and, first responders and people working, as far as in hospitals, doctors, pastors, all of these people, and what you're taking on every day, we have to learn ways to pendulate that out of our body, because there is such a high level of burnout and, processing what also you're watching in other people and what they've survived. So, I know for me, a lot of times I'm like, okay, I see I'm out of alignment. I have to come back to my center. I need to go reset, and really incorporating that. I'm sure you know too that having those trips where you go and recenter and pour into you, and having, I structure where I go into my day later in the day, because my morning practice and all of those things are so important to do the work that we do. And in the world that we're in right now, there's such a high level of angst and activation, and globally, especially after COVID, we're all kind of in that fight, flight, freeze state in our nervous system. And so learning how to find a grounded ventral vagal state and to regulate ourselves and those around us is just so important at this time, just as a collective.
Well, I think the different modalities you're bringing into your work is pretty powerful too. I mean, you talked about yoga, sound. I love the speech pathology background. Like, I can only imagine.
Yeah. All my studies were like I said, TBI, traumatic brain injury, stroke. I'm so, the brain is so fascinating. And that's where I've, really deepened into this quantum neural integration that I'm doing in the body. And, I had this basis of the speech pathology and reflex integration and bioenergetic healing. And then the language around the trauma sensitive yoga and coming into your body, that interoception piece, and then bringing in the frequency and sound through the bowls, has really guided me to create this quantum neural integration method. And so that's really working in the brain and down into the vagus nerve. And, I can sense in and feel when we have a brain that's struggling with more OCD thoughts, or I can get into parts of the brain where there's PTSD, and work in the brain to help it expand and come out of that constriction or contraction. So it's really just, and all my clients who I'm so blessed they're so brave and so courageous, and their bodies have guided me in so many different ways depending on their past and where they've been. And so it's just been this beautiful orchestration of things just coming through naturally through each person that I work with, because everybody's individualized, and there are a lot of people. I work a lot with narcissistic abuse and sexual abuse and all different types of histories, but so many people, when we look at really the root of what's coming from, the worthiness and feeling worthy, feeling like you have choice and agency, and showing people that they're allowed to use their voice and be empowered. And it's just so beautiful to watch people step into that, from where they usually see people in more of a lot of times a crisis situation, loss, things like that. And to see where they begin and where they go is just such a beautiful unfolding.
Mm. I love that. Darcy, do you have any questions yet?
Oh, I absolutely do. Thank you so much for bringing your authenticity and leadership, really, in not only how you guide people and what you've created, but also holding the light up that I know for me, I imagine for others that there's hope in, like, healing happens, especially with some of the conditions and experiences that you've named. And there's countless, really, that it can seem really impossible. It can feel impossible for people in it, or witnessing a loved one. I'm really curious if you've been inspired by, if there's someone you've been inspired by, or maybe a life story that you're willing to share of how this was birthed, if you're open to it.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I come by this honestly. So experiencing early trauma and just that drive of, how do I fix myself? How can I empower myself? So that was kind of my early experience, and then experienced a lot of medical issues, unexplained medical issues, autoimmune and gut issues, infertility with my daughter, and then ended up having 3 months of bed rest, and she's an IVF baby and my miracle. So really, just all of these life experiences, I always tell people that come into my office, like, this is your life school, and this is what is creating the person that you're going to be, and your testimony, and how you're going to step forth. And so I feel like, when I look back, do I want to go back and walk through these things again? Not necessarily, but I know they've shaped me into who I am today, and I'm able to bring this to other people. And so that makes it worth it. But I would say it really, started to come into fruition when I was in a situation and needed to leave my marriage. And it was a very complicated high complex situation, and I was taking my son, who was showing a lot of signs of dysregulation and trauma. He had a pretty difficult birth, so he kind of came into the world that way. And then unfortunately, we know inner utero trauma, and so the chemicals that were in my body while he was in utero kind of set him up for a more difficult start. And so I was taking him to a practitioner in town, a pediatric clinic, to help with his nervous system doing reflex integration. And in my extremely dysregulated state at that point, she would have one practitioner take him, and then they would put me on the table to receive the reflex integration. And I saw what it did for me. I saw what her loving presence did for me. And when I saw what it shifted in my body and my ability to start coming back into my body after years of dissociation, I said, I'm going to dedicate my life to this when my brain is online and when everything's connected and I have memory. And so it was at that point that it was right around COVID time. I had already stepped into yoga instruction and learning more about that and trauma sensitive yoga. And I had also walked with another person before I had the courage to leave my marriage. And she did bioenergetic healing on me. And so that was something else that she was guiding my body before that. And so there's a lot of wonderful people who really helped me on this journey. And that's where I take pieces that I learned from all of these beautiful individuals and then have kind of honed in of like, what did that person bring and how can I put that as part of one of my pillars, and et cetera. And yeah, so then once COVID happened and everything shut down, I'd already done a 4-day course in reflex integration. And then once everything went online, I took over 100 hours, as many hours as I could take, and really focused on PTSD and anxiety and how those things could help integrate into the body through that reflex integration. And then she hired me on and we worked in the foster care system. And what I was noticing was we were working with these kiddos in the foster care system whose trauma was beyond anything most of us can conceptualize. But we weren't working with either the foster care families or the families that they were going back to. And so I saw this void and this hole that in that co-regulation piece that we were talking about, that we were regulating the kiddos' nervous systems, but then we were sending them back to dysregulated homes. And so I asked her, can I focus on the parents, and how do we, they're surviving their own traumas. We all have our own things, whether that's big T or little t trauma. And so if they can be co-regulators in the home and we're working with the kids and the parents, then that's really where I feel that we can create change. And so I worked with her for a while and learned as many things as I could, and then opened my own practice and had a small yoga studio where people could come into their bodies. So we would work on things, and then they could come into a room with 8 or less people and no mirrors. And it was just a safe place to move their body and do whatever they felt was needed. And so that mind-body piece really started to come into play. And, especially during that time around COVID, so many people, again, we were under a collective trauma. And so I just kept learning more and more about the nervous system and just saw that I believe everything starts in the nervous system, no matter what it is in the body. If we have a physical issue, shoulder, I see a lot of people before they're supposed to get a surgery, and they may not have to because I'm working within the nerves. And so we can get those to release and unwind, because a lot of times we're holding patterns from the past within the body. Or even after surgeries, whether we have hardware in our body and our bodies are kind of rejecting that. Working in the hips, the psoas, the muscle of the soul. So really just looking at the whole piece, the whole person, and helping people, to guide them back to their wholeness. And, again, that divine authentic blueprint, like who we were in our essence when we are divine spark of conception, and trying to guide them back to that as we take off the layers slowly. Everything is very much an invitation for the body and the mind when it feels safe, and those things surface when we do feel safe. And so, that was kind of my long of coming towards, what I've created, but it's been a beautiful journey. And like I said, I wouldn't want to go back to some of those things, but it helps me to know everybody's journey is different, and we all have our own shoes that we wear, but to sit with people and to offer them hope that I have been in a lot of these very difficult spaces and places, and that there is hope and there is healing, and that happens within relationships, and that happens within ourselves as we empower ourselves. So Yeah.
I hear so much humanitarian in you.
Mm.
And like, hand went to my heart a number of times when
Mm.
you're sharing. It takes bravery and devotion to put words to life experience. And I know that for me and some listening are going to have this spark of maybe it's not so impossible. Maybe what I've been grappling with for ages, maybe it can change. The fatigue is real in the journey or quest for healing. And it sounds like you offer um, so many different paths into the experience that if one is blocked, for whatever reason, someone doesn't want to practice yoga or somatic movement, they can come in a very different way. Um, and that the body becomes a home. That's really what I'm hearing in what you're sharing also, which is really, I mean, the gift of a lifetime to learn how to do that more, if not all the time. Oh, I'm so
Well, and I think
grateful that you're following this. Yeah.
oh, thank you. And, and I want to really say to the listeners and to you guys too, it's not perfect. And I am a human too. And even recently, I think a lot of us has been feeling this increase in energy and this opportunity to go deeper into the spiral. That was the spiral program that I created, is that we're going into that healing and then we come back out and live it. And then we go deeper, and healing is not linear. And sometimes we feel like we are pulled back and we're like, oh my gosh, I've already dealt with this 100 times. How am I here again? And different situations arise. And this just means that you're going deeper into your healing. And especially for a lot of us who have walked that journey and maybe have clients that mirror similar things that we've gone through, and no matter how much healing you've had, sometimes there is exhaustion, there is fatigue, and sometimes those things do feel overwhelming. And so that's why I feel like it's so important to support one another and to truly be honest and authentic. And I'm very honest with my clients, and not acting like there is this hierarchy. I am with them, and it is a team approach, and they have a voice, and this is where they practice that. And I don't have it all figured out. I still am learning every day, every week, and am humbled. So I think that's a lot of it too, is just that humanity of, we are all one. We all struggle every day. And the more that we can be honest about that we're all doing our best. But I think the biggest thing is to, I say in relationships when I work with couples that, if both couples are committed to growth, I think anyone can get through anything. It's when we stop growing. And sometimes we have to take breaks, and sometimes we have to learn new ways of being. But if we keep having that growth mindset, we keep supporting each other and see the humanity in one another, I think that's where we can truly change as a collective. And like you said, I do feel that humanity piece, and I'm always like, how can I save the world? And so it's hard to step back and go, okay, what I'm doing is important, and I am being guided, and how I can be of most impact, and to meet the other people who also are wanting to be of impact, and how can we all work together to support each other, because it is such a critical time in history where there is a tipping point. And I think there's so many of us feeling that nudge, feeling that pull, feeling that in our heart space. And the more that we support one another and come together, that's where real change is created.
Amazing. I'm wondering if there are any, you had mentioned, I think, a new series that you spoke to, like a kind of a 20-day series or something
Oh,
that.
the 22-day nervous system. Yeah, so I did this about 4 years ago, and it was created really through my own experience. Most of the things that I've created have been, I also just finished, and I'm going to be launching a book here soon, because I really feel like that shared humanity and experience from one another is where we shift and change. So the 22 days was created because I was looking at, how do I anchor in these changes every day? Because again, like you said, we can go to do these other modalities, but then our body just keeps shifting back. And so how can we create a structure every day, or tools throughout the day, to keep anchoring us back as we walk into the world where there is stress, and we're integrated with other people who maybe are struggling too. And so this is teaching all of the pillars that I believe we need within our nervous system. And so it's written prompts every day, takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And then there are audio meditations where you are coming into your body, where you are visualizing, creating a sacred space, guiding things out of your body to pendulate. And that can be done in your home. And why that was created was so when people came into session with me, then they already had all this background knowledge. And when people were waiting to see me, they had to wait a few months to get in, then they could start working on this on their own, to start paving the path so they could start learning the language, and we weren't using that time in session. And really where I see this for the future is just for anyone, but also really in those family integration services that maybe their children are walking through the spiral program or receiving that curriculum. And this is something that they can do on their own. They don't have to receive the services, but they can start empowering their body, their mind to create these shifts and changes. And it goes through, vibration and frequency, polyvagal theory, like I said, creating your sacred space, really starting every day with gratitude and intention and I am statements, because this shift is not easy. And like I said, I feel like I've been doing this work pretty much my whole life, and I still have slipbacks, and there are still things, because it's life, and there are new things that surface that we're doing the best we can, and with our histories or new traumas that happen. And so this is a lifelong journey. And like I said, I have clients that maybe I saw 5 years ago, and they may reach out because things have shifted and they need a little bit of integration again. And so it is this constant of how do we grow? What are the supports? What are the things? And that's why I brought in so many modalities, because sometimes we need to talk, and sometimes we just need to lay on the table and receive and feel that loving, nourishing, unconditional vibration and frequency to help us shift. Sometimes it's the bowls that we're lying in a room at a sound bath, and that gets into the places and spaces and those lower vibrations through drumming and things like that can create that strong, stable base in our root chakra, and then build up from there. And that's where the sound comes in, is it's really working through those energetic systems. But all of it, my passion too is I only have so much time, and my goal is to empower everyone else. And so then you just come in and you tap in when you need me or your other practitioners. But the goal is, like you said, Darcy, to create that safe home within you. And no matter what's going on around you, no matter who comes in and out of your life, that you'll be okay, because you have yourself, and you have the walk on the spiral, those in and outward, times, that journey with your creator, whether that's universe or God or ancestors or angels, that you're not walking this alone, and that there are other supports and intelligences around us that are supporting us on that walk. And when we can come home and find safety, and when we can create safety for our different parts, that's really, I feel like, true healing stabilizes and anchors, and then turns into embodiment.
Thank you so much for being on this podcast and doing the beautiful work that you do. I'm so grateful. This is just a really huge needed piece. We need many of you scattered throughout the world.
That's my goal someday, is I would love to. I've done some trainings. I do mentorship right now, but someday I really want to teach, especially the quantum neural integration. That is, the more people that we can help, the more ways that we can support people, especially within their bodies, whether that's somatically sitting next to someone. But the more that we can expand this type of work and all the work that all of us are doing, it's so needed. So thank you. Thank you for seeing me and this opportunity. I'm really grateful.
Right on. And we'll definitely have your information and contact below, and we'll have any new workshops available for people to access on your site and whatnot. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor.